In this we're all the same. We're links in the chain.
That is something. That is something. I'm so happy we were able to get that playing right now. We were very, very adamant about that being played every morning, every afternoon, every evening, wherever you're tuning in, to get us in the right mind frame and the right place and heart space to talk some conflict. So that was beautiful. I'm so glad y'all got a taste of that. But welcome back to Working It Out Across Generations, where a mother and son duo talk conflict and give skills to resolve some of those conflicts. I'm one of your hosts, Justin Hurdle Price. To my left, right, I'm not too sure on my screen, but to my side here is my co-host.
Hi, I'm Dr. Lynne, everybody. I'm so glad that you tuned in. I hope if you were here for episode 1, you are back. And if you're new to us, welcome, welcome. Today's topic is something that I've wanted to talk about for a long time. Can parents be friends with their children? Well, we're about to find out. Well, at least from
Awesome.
our perspectives, anyway. It's such an important topic to me, and we hope that it is for you too. You know, we are going to want to hear from you. We want your comments. You put them in the chat. Comment about how you're feeling about what we're saying, your experiences. Let us know. Maybe you're friends with your parents, or maybe you're friends with your children. I don't know, or maybe that's the last thing you're looking for. But whatever it is, if you're here with us, please comment and we will get to you. I wanted to talk about this topic for a couple of reasons. Well, one, because it keeps coming up a lot of times when I talk with other parents or throughout the years. But the other is I keep seeing it also in different places, maybe articles, social media. I was reading a survey yesterday that said 47% of parents really do want to be friends with their children, which I find interesting. I would have loved it if they had broken it down, though, racially and culturally, because believe me, I know cultural norms have a lot to do with how we parent, and it's passed on from generation to generation. It certainly was for me. I mean, I'm a Black mom. I define myself as African American, and there's some things that come with that. Some of y'all may know, and it doesn't really matter if that's not how you define yourself, but if culturally you understand that there are some things that were passed on to you, that were told to you, and when you become a parent, you know, culturally, those are the things that people pressure, right? Sometimes lovingly, sometimes just like judgmentally, they pressure you to parent in that way. And as a Black mom, one of the things that I know is we got a lot of, like sayings, and we got to have all of the, I don't know, I'm doing it now, like the head movements and just the emphasis on, and I know because I said so, because I'm the mom, those are real deal in my life. I grew up with them. And so I know, like I said, I know the influence of culture. But the reason I wanted to talk about this for me is because one of the most lasting uh, and influential conversations of my life, and it wasn't really a conversation as much as I would have wanted it to be, was when I was 19 and I was away at college, and then I would come home, during the breaks, and I was home for a break. It was actually summer, and I just was so tired of being told what to do, being told what, in particular, but both my parents actually, what they thought of what I was doing, or where I was going, or who I was going out with, I just said, look, I really want to have a conversation, and I sat them down and I talked about how the things that I was really unhappy about, and my mom said to me, well, there may be other moms that you look up to, but I'm going to tell you, I will never be your friend. And
Wow.
I can remember that striking me as wrong. Right. It just like, but why? But why? Because I'm always going to be your mom. And I will say, in her defense, because we do our best as parents, right? And we do with what was given to us. In her defense, her mom, oh my gosh, till the day my mom died, because unfortunately my mom passed before her mom, uh, she always had to hear her mom's opinion of the things she was doing or saying, and we certainly did. I heard my grandmother's opinion, and then I heard my mom's opinion. Oh, till in my 30s, absolutely. It just never stopped, unfortunately, until they passed away. So for me, that was a monumental conversation. And I can remember thinking to myself, I wish that that weren't true. We didn't have a lot of conversations. We didn't have a really buddy buddy kind of relationship, but I still would have wanted to have a relationship where we could have been friends. And I know that for me, that was a goal as a parent, that at some point, hey, I'm raising my kids to be adults, right? My sons, I want them to be functioning adults, well functioning, to be wonderful people. But eventually, the goal is for our kids to be adults. And as adults, I really wanted to make sure that my sons knew that they not only had a mom, but they had a friend. And that those are two distinct roles that sometimes get crossed. But anyway, Justin, okay, before Justin talks, I'm going to tell y'all straight up, because this is a story of my life with Justin. Justin is going to be real. Justin is direct. Justin never holds back. So I'm putting myself in line of fire for y'all. I do this all the time, though. I never ask, my clients. I do conflict coaching. I never ask my clients to do anything that I wouldn't be willing to do. So I am willing to say to Justin his thoughts on uh, why this topic may be important to him, and that means that he's going to have to share some stuff about me. So go for it.
So yes, thank you. I think first of all that yes, you do throw yourself in that line of fire a lot, and I appreciate it because it only prompts just real honest conversation between us two that
Mm,
I feel has really just only shown our foundations and our what we're about and what we've laid down for us that has really increased the trust and the safety that we have in our relationship. So I appreciate your throwing from the line of fire in both ways, right? Creating that space, but also realizing that we're people, right? Things might have to change. So that's huge. But as far as for me with why this topic is important, I think this topic is important because it's very interesting. I growing up and still growing up, 22, right? I have encountered a lot of people who have said that they wish that they had the type of dynamic that I have with my parents and with my family, to be completely real.
mhm,
Um, and the main thing that they are yearning for is that safe space to have these types of conversations, right? To be able to ask questions of the things that you don't know, right? And going to the people as a young person who you trust the most, right? The people you feel safest with, um, knowing that people out there can't do that or haven't been presented with the skills to do that in their household. I think for me, being that I'm on the opposite side of the end here, like I have these conversations with my parents. My parents are, yes, my parents, and they definitely get that respect, but they're also my best friends. So I can cross that line myself sometimes. However, we've still built that space for us to even do that or be able to do that with each other. And I
mm,
think that just goes to really show for me personally, like the humility in people, right? I think this was a quote that I came across on social media just scrolling one night, but it said something along the lines of "Be nice to your parents as it's their first time experiencing life too," right? And I think for me, that
I
took
love
a
that.
long right, like, that took a long time to grasp, right? Like, at the end of the day, that hasn't come up on my feed at any other point of my 10
Mm,
plus years of being on social media, right? So for it to come up now, I think was only a sign that, um, we're all people. We're all doing this once. We're all doing this for the first time, and, we have to be able to, not cut things off so quickly, not be willing to come back to something, right? To plant a seed, but not be willing to come back, right? Like, these are things that I think need to happen as a whole for our society, but it does start in the home at the end of the
yeah,
day. So I think
yeah.
that's why this conversation is very much needed, and I'm excited to talk about not only our relationship, but to hear some more about some of your relationships as well, some of your dynamics, and see any of the correlations, and see how we can bridge some of those gaps.
Yeah, and we'll be talking about if you're interested in building a relationship, a friendship with your children, your adult children or child, then we're going to stay tuned because we are going to be giving you some tips just from our experience of how you can do that. I do want to say for those out there who believe that we have more than one life, then maybe that quote isn't something that you believe in. But in any case, it hits me. It definitely hits me. I think what it really says is that we're all learning, no matter where we are on this journey. We're all learning, and that really does relate to our relationship because I would say that we have a great relationship, but it has been built. There is no question whatsoever. It has been built.
Definitely.
And I'm so glad that I got the early warning sign that I was going to have to build it, because I'm going to tell you, uh, Justin's dad, my husband, unfortunately passed in 2020. But I can remember the two of us laughing so much when he was 3. By the time he was 3, we looked at each other and said, he just really does not understand why he has parents. Not us, so we're not taking it personally. Like, it's not like he doesn't understand why we are his parents. He doesn't understand why anybody is his parent. Like, this kid really believes he can do it all himself. He's got everything he needs. And that's the way you conduct it yourself a lot of the time. So for me, it really was intentional to be your mom, and to be your mom in a way to give you space, because that was your personality. And your my older son Jabari, they're 6 years apart. He was different, so he needed something different. But I wanted to build that strong relationship with him, and we had a lot of conversations when he was younger, and it was just intentional and a lot of great fun. But I think the important thing for me was that it has to be built. And it really has been built. The friendship part of our relationship has been built over these last 3 years as you've been coming into adulthood, really,
Mhm.
because your dad, as I said, passed in 2020. So I had to do still a lot of momming for you,
Absolutely.
right? For you and
Absolutely.
Jabari, but you being here with me in New York, I had to do a lot of momming while at the same time trying to let you grow and be an adult, or learning what adulthood was, at the same time fighting against what was instilled in me, because all of us, things get passed down, whether we want to still parent in that way or not. Things get passed down. And so I had to do a lot of really trying to unlearn some things, because I was doing some of the things that my mom did that I didn't like, and that certainly kept us from being friends. And I didn't want to do that. And then at the same time, so many things. There's a scary world out there. I mean, come on, parents, y'all know what I'm talking about. And so letting go and watching you grow, and knowing that I've made my own mistakes, part of me is like, I don't want you to make them, but the other part is like, yeah, I survived. You'll be all right. But that's hard too as a parent. So,
Yeah.
as I said, I think for my part, it was very intentional that we build a friendship while alongside of me momming, and I can remember a lot of times in this building of the friendship, you saying, I need you to take off your mom hat right now because that's
Yeah.
not what I need in this moment. Yeah. Well, so I don't know your thoughts about how we built it, or was you intentional about building it?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, the I was very intentional about taking advantage of the space that you and dad were providing for us, right? At the end of the day, for me, I it's very early, and I think a lot of people do, and young people do. Um, but I'm just going to speak from my experience. I knew early in life, like just from going to school, being home, like starting that routine of life, right? In that aspect, that the people who I probably would trust the most or go to for help or go to with questions, right? Who could see me at my lowest, could see me at my highest, and are still gonna hold me was my family, right? And on top of all of that, like I said, y'all creating that space, right? We did things as a family like family circles, right? Where we had like a talking piece and we'd go around and we'd share whatever's on our hearts, whatever's on our minds, something about how we're showing up as a family or things of that nature. And, I was 3, 2, whatever. I couldn't really
But
verbalize what
we
I
had you
wanted
in
to
those
say.
circles from the time you were a baby, and we gave you the talking piece to
Yep.
make sure that you had your say, even though we didn't know what you were saying.
Right. Exactly. I didn't even know what I was saying. But I think even just knowing that I had a seat at the table
Mhm.
and that I wasn't, you know, uh, essentially in your growing up and your dynamic of, like young people aren't supposed to offer opinions or interrupt certain adult talk and things of that nature. And I feel like that was completely eliminated from day one. And I felt that, right? I could feel that shift from subconsciously what my mom had, well, both my parents had gone through growing up in a way, um, to really wanted to do something different in their parenting now that they had the control and they had, the opportunity to do that. So I think that because that was such a rare thing, right? Those are things that aren't even happening in schools as much as you think. Talking pieces and circles and things of that nature. I think that because I had that in my household, right, and for a child, they're spending most of their time either in school or at home, right? And so knowing that, yes, I was living kind of one reality for half the day, but living what I really was about and around the people that I was about and was safe in that. I think that was definitely something that once I started to get older, once I started to get into social media and enter those aspects of my life, partying and being young and like that, there was no fear asking any of these questions. There was no fear with anything that was coming up because I knew that um, I had a voice, and that it was a voice that was wanted, a voice that was wanted to be heard by people who I truly feel safest with. So I knew once I got that space, that I it's not that I, but again, it's that it would be much harder at that point to create that space again. Because if you're given that, that's a blessing. To create it from there is real work. So I definitely realized I had to do a part. It wasn't just my parents.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because I remember as you were talking, I remembered that your dad, before we became parents, I remember him saying, we have boys. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to be hard on my sons. And I said, why? And he couldn't answer the question. And I think it's because someone had told him, right? He didn't grow up with a dad, and someone had told him that that's what he was supposed to do, particularly as a Black father. And I would say I think you would agree. He was not.
Nope,
That was not that was not who he
not
was.
at all. Very gentle.
Yeah, and he enjoyed the conversations, and sometimes we would have to hide our face and laugh because you would say things, both of you really would say things that were just like, oh, I know we're supposed to, respond to that in a different way, but it was really kind of funny. I can remember also just in talking about building this relationship, right? You and I, but also with your brother, I can remember having a conversation, and I think he was probably 10, which means you were 4, and having a conversation about listening, and really that I felt that you all weren't listening to me, that you were doing whatever it is you wanted to do, and
Mhm.
I was straight in mothering, which I believe that you all weren't adults, so I believe that mothering is what I do, is what you should do, because when you're talking about children, because you get them to adulthood by being that parent,
Mhm.
right? And when you all listened, when I finished talking, he said, well, Mom, can I just say this to you? If you want us to listen to you, I think you should start with listening to us. And I thought to
I thought that
myself,
was gorgeous. That's I think that's a beautiful response. I'm with that all day.
but first of all, I thought to myself, number one, this is always what Flash is. I know I'm not the only one. This is always what flashes. Oh, I could have never said that to my mother.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
pow, 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 that's out. That's
yeah.
it. That flashes in your mind. So I remember that flashing. The other thing was, oh, doggone it, that was kind of true. That I really wasn't doing a good job of listening to y'all in those days. And and then the other thing was, I was really proud of the fact that as parents, we had created this space where he felt safe enough to say, because he didn't say it with a attitude or a smart mouth or whatever smart mouth is. Y'all know what smart mouth is. He didn't say it like that. He just really listened to what I said and then waited for me to finish and simply said, you might want to try listening to us if you want us to listen to you. And I appreciated that we had parented in a way to give him the space to say that piece that's on his mind. And that takes me into this place of parents saying to me, because I did a lot of parent workshops, right? I was blessed to start in the conflict resolution field before I became a parent. So I had a lot of skills ahead of time. And then and unfortunately, my mom died right before our oldest Jabari came into our lives. And I didn't have her wisdom alongside. And yes, I knew I would have been critiqued every step of the way, but I still really longed for her wisdom. But then I realized that it also gave me freedom, the freedom to parent the way I wanted to. And I used a lot of conflict resolution skills in doing so. In parenting workshops, though, a really great question would come up. And that was, well, do I have to be their friend, or is it just okay that we have a really good relationship? And I love that question, because really, what's the distinction? I think for some parents, it is that distinction makes them feel better because they didn't grow up with a model as a friend. In fact, they may have been told that that's the last thing that you want to be with your kids. And so that friendship thing doesn't feel great for them. But good relationship, can they talk to me? Do we get along? Do we enjoy each other's company? That some parents may be striving for. But there are also parents who are like, nah, I'm not with none of that. That's not my job. And we want to talk about reasons against being friends with your children. And again, remember, we're talking about adult children, because we're already on the same page that there are roles in our lives, I believe, and to be a parent, to be a mom, there's a time period, a length of time when I'm going to be doing that so I can get you to adulthood. And then in adulthood, I really want to have that friendship on top of the good relationship. So, Justin, can you start us off with reasons against? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So we've found for our first reason against why parents would want to extend that friendship aspect into implement and extend that friendship aspect into their relationships is simply because if they weren't brought up in that type of dynamic, in that type of environment, in that type of relationship, if they weren't exposed to that, right? If that was something that they didn't see not only in their own household, but in other households, then for that person, for that parent, for that adult, they could feel as if, well, that's not even possible, right? Just off of a, well, you don't know what you don't know kind of thinking, right? And while that is true in some aspects of if that's your experience and that's something that you weren't exposed to and it just doesn't feel possible or seem possible or you don't know where to start, the reality is that you don't want to live there. You don't want to move into that space of thinking, that frame of thinking, because we are going to get into coming up some reasons for, but we are staying on against. So we've often found that just parents feel as if, oh, well, I didn't see it. I didn't think it was possible, right? And because I didn't think it was possible, I didn't know where to start.
Mhm.
And that has only helped them solidify already their other beliefs around tougher parenting or keeping your finger on certain things, right? And so just that lack of exposure is a big reason against as to why this type of relationship isn't truly normal in every single household, you know.
Yeah, that leads us into the second reason that people are against it is because they don't know how to do anything else, right? But to be that role, right? If it's a mom role, dad role, whatever your role is, because while we can define mom and dad as parents, that people call parents all kinds of folks in their life, the people who parented them, help them to shape them into who they are and grow up. And if you don't know how to be friends, right, or how to shift that relationship, the only thing you do know how to do is to parent, then you're good with that. You don't want to do anything else. You're doing your job. That's what you were assigned to do, and that's what you're going to do. And nobody's saying you didn't do a great job doing it, because there are plenty of parents who do not wish to be friends with their children or do not know how to be friends with them, who did a great job, right? Bringing them along, and they just don't really want to even get the skills. They're good with what they got. So let's talk about reasons for, right? Why some parents really believe that they want to be friends with their adult children.
Yeah, so I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is simply that being that I've benefited and still currently benefit from this blessing of having parents as friends and being able to have any and every conversation in the book with them. It's
Ooh,
simply
yeah,
that
yeah. Get ready for any and every conversation.
yeah, any and every, seriously, any and every. But it simply eliminates this fear factor. Again, speaking from that young person's perspective, it eliminates the fear factor of, well, how will they respond? Is this something that I can even bring to them? Will this disappoint them? Is it right? Young people and kids and children and right, we are constantly thinking of making our parents proud
Mm,
or constantly, whether it's going down the route that they wished for us, that they might have paved the way for us, or going a completely different path, right? The end goal is still making our parents proud. And often when things come up for us that we don't know about, that we don't know how to respond to, right? Young people feel like we know everything. We feel like the world is in our palm of our hands, right? When that gets tested, we want to go to the people who, we trust and feel safest with. However, that fear factor of, is this going to disappoint them? Is this going against the grain of the type of person they want me to be? All of these just extreme questions and worries come up, and we want that eliminated, right? And it is eliminated when you, as the adult, takes that you know step forward, right? As the young person is absorbing everything that you do, right? To create that space and say, there's no dumb questions, right? There's judgment here, right? You can trust me, right? I've got you. And of course, we as young people know that, you know, parents, they're the reason that we're living, they're the reason that we're breathing and we're alive and things like that. But to really hear those things and have those things vocalized to us, again, only brings in that humility factor. And again, it just increases your trust levels. Um, as I said, there's no dumb questions in our house, right? So I can come with whatever knowledge or lack thereof that I have, and try to clear that up with the people who I know have my back the most. And I'm completely secure in that. I know the day whenever I leave my house, right? Whenever I leave these people, I've got to put on these other hats. I've got to play these other roles. I've got to play these other parts, still being me, right? But there is this literal sigh of relief through my body that I get when I'm around my family and my people. So, uh, yeah, I mean, I that trust is everything, like
Yeah.
completely,
Yeah.
completely. But it starts with eliminating that fear factor. No dumb questions, no judgment, things like that.
Yeah, well, I do want to say that I'm very aware that developmentally, I feel like it wasn't the same, right? As teen years, there were things you kept from us, but
Mhm.
ultimately, when you had to really call on somebody to help, or you just really needed to unburden yourself because you're definitely that kind of person, you would tell us,
Mhm.
and we wanted that to happen, and that's why I said, be ready for the direct if that's your child, or your adult child, if that's who they are. The reason, also, there's another reason we came up with for wanting to have this friendship, develop this friendship. I believe that it's very healthy to learn how to let go. When you get into parenting, for some of us, it's our whole life, it's our everything, it's our identity. And I think that there are people that are doing work on helping people not make that their identity, particularly as mothers, I will say. But we may just really turn our whole lives over to this role, and learning to let go and find out who they are, and helping them to trust themselves to find out who they are is so important. I remember another conversation that I had, no, in that same conversation with my parents. And I said, I can make my own decisions. And I remember my dad, who was so much more what looser and down and easier to go to than my mom. He said to me, well, how can you do that better than us? Who knows you better than we do? And I said, me, because I'm me.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm saying in my head, half the things I haven't told you because I could. So I know me better than you. And at the same time, he had a point, because they were so controlling, uh, that I didn't get to really know me and what were the decisions that were best for me, because I was too busy doing what they wanted and expected me to do. So letting go is a really good reason for developing this friendship, right, with your children, and finding out who you are, who they are, and taking joy in that. And you're a different person at this stage in their life, and they're different too, and they're growing and finding out more about themselves at this stage in their life. So it can be really liberating, I think those are two good reasons for it.
Yeah.
But then we come to the place of, then how do you do it, right? What are some tips that we can give, rather, for that? Yeah, starting young, right? You gotta start young. And when I say that, I mean it's really about developing the relationship of being able to talk. Justin talked about that we did family circles, right? And family meetings. And the thing about family meetings, I always taught this in my parenting workshops, we tend to call them when there's an emergency. So kids are terrified of family meetings. They don't. The first thing they'll ask is, "Are you getting a divorce or something? Somebody died," and that says that you haven't established it as a way for the family to come together and to really talk to each other. So you really want to start young with opening the door for having the kinds of conversations that you want to develop and grow as they get older. Number two is your children aren't you. Yeah. Justin, you want to say something about that? Because you are so you and always were you.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly in the sense of who knows you better than you, right?
Right.
Like I very much again, it's not that I didn't think I needed parents. It's more just who are you and who are you to tell me this is what's best for me, right?
Mhm.
That was always
That was
my
always your mantra. Yes.
that was always my mantra of just this is who I am, I know me, and the things that I don't know, I'm going to figure out, and it's only my work to figure that out, right?
Mhm.
And so, yes, I had help, I needed help to do these things, but again, even then, I was always clear at the end of the day with, and to this day, whoever I encounter, I am me. You're not going to change me, and you got to find something to love, I guess, and the reasons to stay, and all of those things, right? Like that's your work to do. As I will do the work that I have to do to overcome whatever it is I need to make sure goals get met. But absolutely, I mean, who knows you better than you, right? Like that's just I thought everyone thought like that, and that was a very humbling experience walking around this earth and encountering anyone that doesn't exactly think like that,
I
who really is a
never
team player, and so
I
yeah,
never met anybody who thought that. And in so many ways it was so bold and fascinating. And it didn't just stop at us. It extended to adults in authority. And raising a son like that, I'm gonna say it, even especially a black male uh, like that in this world is a huge job. If we didn't develop friendship with you as an adult, and if we didn't lay the path and the foundation for that when you were little, it would have been worse. As it was, you had a very rocky ride because that's you're always going to be you, and uh, that can be very difficult. But at the same time, I think that it's important because your children are not you. Too many of us really try to make them us,
mhm,
or are excited that they're going to follow in our path. I put you all to work in conflict resolution early because I knew I could get you to work, and I worked young, and I felt like you needed to have your own money, but I never expected you to go into the work or to be like me. That was not my expectation. Uh and I think it's important that parents don't do that to their children.
yeah, absolutely. I'm just here off of pure heart and heart work. Like you laid both of you laid that foundation and gave us that experience, but again, that was just you planting a seed. Like that was on me to water it, or to even think that's a seed to water, right? But that's my work to do. So I appreciate that experience because it's gotten me here. I've learned so much, right, of just so many things about life and principles and how you conduct yourself and things of that nature. But I mean, the friendship that we've developed really, I think, is the best part.
Yeah.
Because I really got to see my family in different kind of roles, right? Like we had to step out of that mother and son role
Yeah.
dynamic and get into straight. This is work. We're working right now, and we have something to provide, right? So just putting that out there. Thank you for the experience.
Yep. And developing relationship tip number three is to be honest, not judgmental. Ooh, it's hard not to be judgmental, especially when you were brought up by a judgmental parent. And especially when it's sort of told. There's no handbook really for parenting, but somewhere in there, the message gets communicated that you need to have an opinion about everything, especially if it's something you wouldn't do, right? Remember, they're not you, but we think they are. You need to say something. I can remember I was grown. Had moved out. I had my own place. I don't remember what the situation was that I had done, but I remember some, late 20s, right? My mom saying to me, "Well, I would be remiss as your mother if I didn't tell you what I thought of that." I'm just like, I don't understand how that makes you remiss if you just keep your mouth shut and keep your opinion to yourself and let me just live my life. I don't see that as being remiss as your mother. There are plenty of times when I've had opinions about things that you have done and your brother, but y'all are adults and y'all gonna make your own mistakes, as I made plenty of mine. And I feel like the kind of relationship we've developed, if you want my opinion, you'll ask for it. And as
And you'll
hard
give it.
and
Yeah,
I'll give it.
you will give it. When we ask, you provide. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, then, since that sounds like a little bit like sometimes that creates conflict, let's talk about then what
Yeah,
creates conflict.
absolutely. So we really do want to stress that as we're talking, right? Again, this was built day in, day out, you know, when we're right in front of each other, when we're states away, countries away, right? We this is work. It takes work, it takes effort, it takes energy, right? An exertion of. So, we are just speaking from we've done the work, but we're also still students, as we've said, right? We're going to continue doing the work. But yes, you're absolutely right. Regardless of just even our natural different dynamics as people and individuals, conflict naturally will come up just in trying to do this, right? In trying to build this type of honestly unbreakable bond,
Yeah.
right? And I think one of the things that really you will run into is that there's going to be times where you're going to step out of your foundational grounds, right? So, for instance, let's say your child comes home with something from school that they did, right? You didn't like it. Somehow, some way, the conflict escalates to yelling, right? Or judgmental, right? Being judgmental of, you should have done this or should have done that, or I wouldn't have, whatever it is, right? If you've laid that foundation in which, hey, we're not going to be judgmental, hey, we're not going to call each other names, we're not going to, when you step out of those bounds, right? When you step out of those that area, right? Things can start to get rocky, and it's not that that won't happen naturally, as we are all people, right? So you can expect at times to step out of your foundational grounds, which also brings me to my next point, which is the second thing that can create conflict is the lack of acknowledgement thereof, right? So if you do step out of grounds, you do respond a way that you typically have in a way you typically haven't responded in, right? Um, if you've just started to step out of charted territory of how you start to handle some of these conflicts, and you don't acknowledge that on both sides, as a young person and as the parent, um, again, that's going to create a lot of room for assumptions. That's going to create a lot of room for you should have known better. That's going to create a lot of room for honestly not learning, right? It's going to create room for, well, I expected this, and because you've done this and because you've done that, right? And we're all people, as I've said. We've got to be able to acknowledge, hey, this was the space that I was in when responding to you. It had nothing to do with you, right? Being able to do that work internally,
Mm.
being able to know how you're showing up, right? As we talked about in the previous episode, setting some of these goals for yourself ahead of time, right? And remembering some of these goals throughout. If you can't acknowledge as these things are happening, then that's definitely going to make things rocky in just the stability, right? You can have the pieces, you can have the tools, right? But and the stability of what you're trying to build, that could start to make things rocky for you.
Yeah, agreed. And then my favorite, least favorite, that creates a tremendous amount of conflict is being controlling and really here, look, they're adults at this point. Really trying to manipulate is, I know nobody likes that word when it comes to parenting, especially because you feel like what you're doing is either out of love or as your responsibility as their parent. But if we're talking about them being an adult, right, then being controlling and trying to get them to do what you want to do, trying to get them to stay home because you're afraid that something will happen, trying to get them to go out with the person you want for them, trying to get them to be the person you want them to be, to really control who they are, how they think, that creates a tremendous amount of conflict. So if you really want to develop this relationship, you want to look out for these things because conflict's going to happen. It's not all going to be smooth, even in a best friendship with your adult children. Look out for conflict and call yourself out on it, really, and make sure that you make the changes. All right. I think we gave some good stuff there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's see if we have any kind of comments. Yeah, we don't have any comments, but I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to make my own comment and say this, that this is worth the effort. That's really what I want to say. This is so worth the effort that you can put in, invest in this type of relationship, right? With your children, with your adult children, that you can really say, hey, this is important enough for me, whatever difficulties or discomfort it may create for me or for others, because that's the other thing. I can honestly tell you that other folks going to have an opinion. of
Yeah.
I mean, they have opinions all the way throughout, right? When we were your dad and I were raising you, and particularly choosing to use conflict resolution skills, that there were opinions all the way throughout everything that we did. But it's just really, I find it tremendously rewarding to know, and it helps me to know that if you need me or want me to know whatever it is you're doing or thinking or struggling with, that you will in fact tell me. And that's not just about trust, that's a sense of security for me. Like, yeah, I'm fighting back the urge. And I know you talk about, mom, how many times you gonna talk to me?
Yep.
I know that. I know that. So it is there. It's innate as a parent, right? But I also know that, yeah, I can say to myself, if he really wants me to know, I know and trust in this relationship, in this friendship, that he is in fact going to come to me and tell me, and that means everything. Um,
Yeah.
Closing words for you, yeah.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you saying that. And I think for me, just I wouldn't have a role to play in that if you and dad didn't lay down that foundation. Like
Hmm.
that was so important and such a differing factor between like us and like some of our friends and like us and just how we carry ourselves, right? Just laying down these foundations, right? To as I said, give us a voice, to make us feel like we're not taking up space, right? To make us feel like we're wanted to be heard, like I said. And I think that in a world where it's just so easy to do the opposite, right? It's so easy to yell or to, respond the way that you want and not the way that you need.
Yeah.
Um, I think being able to separate the two and being able to do that at such a young age and to have started to master that skill in a way. Again, I wouldn't have had that. I wouldn't be here without that early
Mhm.
exposure and foundation setting from both you and dad. So, just a thank you to you, really, for all you've done and all you continue to do. And at the end of the day, yes, this is rewarding. Uh, this is hard.
Yeah.
It's an everyday thing, right? It's an everyday bit of work that you have to do. Um, right? I can imagine there are times we want to yell, we want to scream, right? But the times that we use our breath, right, and we breathe to stop that, to respond differently, to be efficient, regardless of the outcomes. I think that's the way to go. That's
Yeah.
the way to go. I think there's no other way that I could be living this life. So
Thank you for that. Thank you for wanting to be friends because you gotta want that too on their end.
absolutely,
All right,
absolutely.
all right, y'all. That is our show, and we want to remind you that you can check us out live. First of all, on e360tv.com. Check out all the replays there. And you can watch us live there. You can also watch us live on our Facebook page and check out replays there and our YouTube channel. Subscribe, follow, comment, all of these things for all of the places where you can check us out, check out the show. We're grateful that you even want to spend time with us talking about these topics because there's so many other things that you can do with your time, but we really love we heard last week and from our first episode that people really love the generational aspect of things, and we love providing that too because we just have great conversations, so why not let you in on it? Justin, what you want to say is your final words for this episode?
Yes. I just want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning in with us. As I said, hard work, but just do whatever you can to be a little better than yesterday. And remember, conflict is here to teach us something about ourselves. So go out there and find out what it is.
Yeah, do it. All right, y'all. We'll see you next week with another great topic. Thanks for tuning in.
See you guys.